If you've been kidnapped to star in a reality TV show only to find you've been trapped in a brutal death game, what would you do? When popularity is the only thing keeping you alive, the most manipulative person will be the winner, and you'll never guess who it is. I'm going to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the death game in Funhouse. Millions of people are going to watch this man die. Casper here wakes up in a strange room with no idea where he is, and the only clue is this welcome card on the side of his bed. Walking out of his room, the man finds two other guys in the common area, and they're just as confused as he is. They all agreed to appear on a reality TV show, but never read the contract, and now they have no idea what they're in for. The man in the pink shirt tells them they were all sedated before they were brought here, their phones were taken away, and all the exits are locked. All the remaining contestants walk into the common room and say hello to the other players, when suddenly the TV turns on and announces that Fergus's House of Fun has officially started. They're offering $5 million to the lucky winner, and each of the contestants are introduced to the audience. That's when this animated panda Fergus appears and explains the rules. Every 3 days, the audience will vote on which contestant gets to stay, and whoever has the least votes per round must complete a challenge. If they fail, they'll be taken out of the game, but they have no idea that losing will get them killed. They're not allowed to leave the house, and everything they do will be streamed 24/7. The only other people they'll see are the staff, but they're forbidden from telling the contestants anything. Okay, this is really suspicious. First of all, every single one of these celebrities were drugged and kidnapped. But the fact that they seem laid back about this tells us a lot about who they are, because it means that they're either all stupid or extremely desperate for fame, and that kind of information will be very important to our survival later on. Now, there's nothing here that directly tells us this will turn into a death game yet, but they're soon going to realize that this reality show is a horrifying trap to torture them for entertainment, with challenges they'll have to face if they want to be the sole winner of this game. The viewers who watch this show will be voting on who they want to stay in the game, but they will be basing this decision on your influence and friendliness within the group. This makes the relationships we form with the other players incredibly important to our survival, because if we choose to befriend the weakest player, it will hurt our chances. The best strategy is to rank order each player's most valuable skills and influence level, and make sure that we are connecting to the strongest players in the group. If we are more associated with the most talented and likable players, then we will be perceived in the same way and won't get voted out in the early rounds. Now, the most valuable player here in terms of skills and intelligence has got to be Kat. She's a chess master, a trained martial artist, and is smart enough to stay quiet and be observant while the others run their mouths without thinking. In terms of influence, the most valuable player is probably Jimena. She's a famous blogger known for covering celebrity gossip, so she has a natural ability to spin false narratives to damage someone's reputation. This could be a deadly tool in a reality TV show, because if we get on her bad side, she could manipulate the voters against us. We want that skill set working in our favor, so she would be my next strategic relationship. The weakest member has got to be Dex here. He's a rapper whose fame is predicated on musical talent, if you want to call it that, so people will care much less about his opinion or personality. That means he has very little influence or skills that would be useful to our survival. The YouTuber in the pink shirt and Ula, the Instagram model, are in the same category. They don't have skills or transferable influence that can be utilized for game survival, so forming relationships with them would be a waste of time. This woman Jimena thinks this game is very suspicious, but with a chance to win $5 million, they all agree to the terms and decide to spend the next 3 days partying as hard as they can. The contestants bond over the experience, getting closer to each other, and introduce themselves to the viewers as they try to get as many votes as possible to advance to the next round. But one of these players is about to become the game's first victim. On the third day, the group gathers to watch as the votes come in and find out that 2 contestants have lost. Lonnie and Nevins here will have to face each other in a knockout round to stay in the game. The others go to this small room to watch the losers complete their challenge, and a pair of blinding goggles are placed over Lonnie's eyes as music starts to play. That's when they all see Nevin being lowered down. He's bound and gagged, and there's nothing they can do to warn her that she's been tricked. The woman is given a studded baseball bat and then spun around by the staff before she's let loose. The other contestants watch in horror as she swings the bat, hitting him over and over until there's nothing left but a bloody pulp. The announcer finally tells her to take off the goggles, and she's shocked to see the man's corpse, realizing she's just committed murder. That's 1 down, with 7 to go. The group is scared for their lives, and the blonde woman begs to be let out, but the panda tells them they're trapped until only 1 contestant is left, and if they don't cooperate, they will be punished with a fate worse than death. Okay. On the surface, this is a terrifying reality to find ourselves in. But if you look just beneath it, you'll find a very stupid person with no instincts for survival. This man did absolutely nothing to prevent himself from getting beaten with a spiked baseball bat, and if he's not even gonna put up a struggle, then he deserves to die. Instead of hanging like a dead fish, he could have lifted his legs and swung on the chain to try and avoid getting hit. If it were me, I also would have tried kicking the bat before it strikes to get her attention, because she wouldn't be able to mistake me for a piñata. Surviving this death game required minimal effort, and this man wasn't smart enough to even try. Now we can also blame this girl, but to a much lesser degree. She couldn't see anything in the room, and would have no reason to think that it's a human being she was hitting, but there was still information for her to realize that something was wrong. A papier-mâché piñata is extremely light, and you would be able to feel the weight and density of the object from the resistance and the bat's recoil. It should have been immediately clear to her that she was not hitting this tiny piñata, and that's on her. Now, this is just about the only thing we can blame her for, because psychological experiments have clearly shown us that when an authority figure tells you to do something, you are statistically more likely to obey them than to use your own judgment. This is what they found in the Milgram experiment, where they had people participate by giving other people electric shocks. Almost everyone obeyed the orders against their own judgment, which is crazy, and as long as the authority seems legitimate, people are more likely to obey. This is exactly what happened. And instead of paying attention to her own intuition, she killed a man and nobody could stop her. But there's one crucial detail here that they're all missing. This woman was having the time of her life while listening to music, and you can have the same experience without ever having to get tangled up by wires getting in your way. Raycon earbuds are comfortable, they sound great, and they start at half the price of other premium earbuds. I like moving my body as much as the next guy, but doing half these acrobatics would be impossible if these were wired, and I never have to worry about them falling out no matter what I'm doing. Unlike some other brands, these don't stick out of your ears, and they come with a bunch of gel tips for your comfort, which is a must in my opinion. Whether you're being chased down by zombies or just trying to chill while studying, you really shouldn't have to break the bank to be able to listen to music or podcasts wirelessly. And not only is the price great, the battery life is great at 32 hours. Raycons even come with a 45-day happiness guarantee. They're that confident that you'll love them. So if you've ever thought about treating yourself with a pair of wireless earbuds but never pulled the trigger, now is the time. Click the link in the description box or go to buyraycon.com/howtobeat to get 15% off your Raycon purchase. Thank you to Raycon for sponsoring this video. The players are freaking out when suddenly the panda appears and congratulates them for reaching the next round. They're horrified and beg to be set free from this reality show, but that's when we finally get to see the mastermind behind this death game. He's been the voice of the panda this whole time and tells them that the only way to escape is to win. Nobody knows where they are, and only one of them will be let out of here alive. They go back to their common room to try to figure out what they should do next, and this man Dex here insists they should try to escape. Looking around, he finds a window that leads outside and thinks they might be able to climb over the wall. Casper insists they need to think of a better plan, but the man refuses to listen and throws one of the chairs straight through the window, breaking the glass. Suddenly, the night sky glitches out, revealing itself to be a projection, and what they thought was outside is actually a closed-off room. They're somewhere underground, and they realize there's no way out but to play and win. That's when the panda appears on the television and tells them that since Dex broke the rules, he will now be punished. 3 masked men come into the room, pointing their guns at the man and shoot him in the leg. They drag him out and take the contestant away to the challenge room, where they put him inside an empty vat. All the players watch in fear as the staff bring in a barrel full of fluoroantimonic acid. The panda tells them it's so corrosive that it can melt a person's flesh in minutes, and as the staff dump the chemicals into the vat, the others can do nothing but watch as he screams in agonizing pain. After a minute of being submerged in the pool, the man is pulled out of the vat, and the other contestants are horrified, seeing that he's half the man he used to be. That's 2 down, with 6 to go. In the common room, the blonde woman is terrified that she's been tricked into a death game, but Jimena here reminds her she's not the only one who's been lied to. She mocks the woman for using her body to get votes, knowing that the audience just wants to see some skin. It's a cheap tactic, but the girl defends herself, saying that she needs to do anything she can to win and survive. It's sad, but Jimena here has zero compassion for her and tries to go for the jugular. The woman tells everyone that Ula is sleeping with the Irishman to manipulate him to her advantage, and it's just another cheap tactic of using her body to get ahead in the game. But Casper here has had enough. Furious, he calls out the woman's hypocrisy, yelling that she's nothing more than a tabloid blogger who exploits people for clicks. Lonnie here can't believe they're arguing over something so stupid when people have just died, and they all realize that the only way to survive is to play the game. Okay, this is getting gruesome, but the most horrifying thing to realize here is that there's nothing this guy could have done to escape. This is no ordinary death game, because instead of traps, they're punishments. So even if you escape, these guys will just shoot you down. The only way to win is to play by the rules and prevent yourself from ever being punished in the first place. With this in mind, we need to be spending all our time strategizing how to get more votes while targeting others to make them as unlikable to the viewers as possible. Now, as petty as these two girls might sound, it demonstrates one of the most strategic tools we have to work with. Because if you can bring out the worst qualities in another player without making yourself look bad, then it manipulates the vote and they'll be more likely to die. This is an absolute goldmine of an opportunity here because all of these celebrities are selfish people who'll do anything for fame. So there are tons of bad qualities to exploit and we can turn the voters against them. I would have done what Casper did by targeting Jimena here and highlighting just how evil she actually is. By pointing out she's written stories on all the other contestants and exploited their suffering, we can pit the whole group against her, and if the group hates her, then the audience will hate her too. I would also have defended Ula here when Jimena was accusing her of using her sexuality to gain votes. It's a totally fair criticism, but sticking up for her is going to make me look like a good guy and it will earn me more votes from the viewers. Jimena will come out of the situation looking really bad and it's going to get her the least amount of votes, which means she'll be next to die in the punishment round. This is the ideal situation to take advantage of, and if we stir up as much chaos as possible without getting emotionally involved, we'll come out on top. Desperate to stay alive, each player goes into the confession booth and talks to the audience, and they'll say anything to get a vote. With tears in her eyes, Jimena here tells them she doesn't deserve to be put through this death game, while the blonde woman begs for help, terrified of dying. The viewers feel sympathetic and start voting on who should survive. They don't think this game is real, but they're about to find out they've made a huge mistake. As people around the world have been watching this death game reality show, the FBI have started an investigation to find the 6 kidnapped contestants. But the mastermind behind this game has made sure there's no way to block the show from streaming. Casper's ex-wife appears on the air and pleads with the public to stop voting, but the reporter points out voting might be the only thing that saves her ex-husband. That night, the group asks Casper how he came to meet his ex-wife, and he explains that he started dating her before she became famous. After 3 months of touring together, they got married and starred in a reality TV show, but things took a bad turn, which eventually led to their divorce. Suddenly, the panda interrupts the group's bonding session to announce the results of the next vote. This time, the blonde and the Mexican woman are tied for last place. They're terrified of what punishment awaits, and the panda announces they must now participate in a tie-breaking challenge called Blind Rage. That's when the staff come in carrying guns and take the losers away to face their punishment. In the challenge room, the panda explains the rules. They will each be given an axe, and when the lights go out, they must fight each other until one of them is dead. With their weapons in hand, the lights are turned off and the challenge begins. Jimena sneaks towards the other contestant and starts swinging, trying to kill the blonde. The woman dodges her attack at the last second and drops the axe on the ground, leaving herself defenseless. The odds are in Jimena's favor, but the blonde picks her weapon up and with one vicious swing, she drives the axe straight into the other woman's skull. Another contestant has just been killed, and that's now 3 down with 5 to go. Okay, this is starting to get a lot more interesting, because now we're seeing these challenges turn into death matches against the other players. This is a really big deal, and it actually gives us a much greater chance to stay in the game instead of just being punished. Now, from the beginning of this challenge, both of these girls have the same odds of winning, but neither of them realized that whoever acts first is going to be more likely to survive. When the lights go out, the first instinct is caution, because if we can't see, then there's no way to defend ourselves against an oncoming attack. This is exactly why we should fight against this instinct and be the first person to strike. Strategically, the most important thing to realize is that your opponent won't move right away, so we'll be able to find their position from memory if we act quickly. Now, this doesn't mean we should sprint straight at her because we might run right into her axe. So if it were me, I would use the room's geometry to my advantage and move to the wall, letting it easily guide me to the opposite corner. This puts you in an excellent position to attack your opponent, because now you're behind them and you'll be able to use the right angle corner to intuitively triangulate their last known position quite effectively. The goal here is to ram into them and push them over, because you'll never be able to time the swing correctly if you don't know how close you are to them. Once they are on the ground, you'll have a better idea of their proximity and be able to take them out in one fatal swing. Later that night, Casper's lying in bed when he hears a loud crash coming from the common room. Rushing out, he sees the Irishman laid out drunk on the floor, and sitting on a corner of the couch is the blonde, Ula. She asks him to take a seat next to her, but Casper turns her down, and realizing that she's incredibly drunk, the man carries her back to her bed. He's about to leave the room when she begs him to stay a bit longer and kisses him, thinking that the audience will vote for them if they sleep together. That's when the Irishman catches them in the act and grabs Casper here in a chokehold, ready to strangle the man to death. He's been sleeping with Ula here since the first night in the game, and even though he knows she's manipulating him, the man is consumed with jealousy. Suddenly, Lonnie rushes in and gets him to let go, but nobody realizes this one moment will change the rest of the game. The next morning, the group gathers in the common room where the panda announces the results of the next voting session. Casper has been given the most votes, while the blonde woman has received the least, but the panda will give her one final chance to survive. She must play a game of memory, and has 2 minutes to match pictures of her Instagram selfies together before time runs out. With the clock counting down, she begins turning the cards over and searches desperately for its match, but she's too slow. The timer reaches 0, and she's failed to match the last 2 pairs. So now she must be punished. Forced to spin the wheel of fun to pick her form of punishment, Ula here has no choice but to accept her fate. The wheel lands on black and sentences her to execution by a stretching rack. One of the gunmen grabs her, but the woman freaks out and jumps onto the man, biting his throat open. Another staff member rushes in to knock her out, and the woman wakes up with 4 ropes tied to her arms and legs. The other contestants watch as she's slowly pulled apart and torn limb from limb until she dies. That's 4 down with 4 to go. Okay, this was not a physical challenge, but it was still extremely beatable. Obviously, if she had a better memory, it would have helped. But there might have been a strategy here that could have saved her a lot of time to figure out where the matches were. The biggest thing working against her here is having to move across the room to flip the cards over, because it's very time consuming. If it were me, instead of running around like a panicking chicken, the best method would be to systematically reveal the row of cards that you are closest to and memorize them. Then work your way one row after the other, and you'll begin to find matches by walking in a single direction instead of wasting your time jumping around aimlessly. Now, there is another way to optimize this, and that would be to start from the center where you have access to the most amount of cards without having to move around. What's crazy interesting here is that this strategy would actually give you a 97% chance of finding a match within arm's reach, and a 70% chance of there being more than one pair. Now, I know it sounds very counterintuitive, and in probability math, this is called a theoretical paradox, where a conclusion is true despite it seeming impossible. Now, for Ula here, a 97% chance of finding a pair are great odds, but despite this, it's still not the best strategy to use. The problem with this is that it requires you to memorize more of them, and the more cards you have to keep in your short-term memory, the easier it is to forget where they are. On average, humans can only store 7 items in their short-term memory, and in a stressful situation like this where you're playing for your survival, even that is a lot to ask. Now, none of this means it's not possible to win the game. 2 minutes is an extremely short amount of time, but as long as you have a strategy that keeps you from wasting your time running around the room, you might have a shot at escaping this death sentence and live to fight another day. Instead of creating a strategy to maximize her 2 minutes, Ula here panicked and it got her killed. The next morning, the group is depressed as they realize 3 more of them will die, but the panda decides to cheer them up and has left a gift for them in the hallway. Casper opens the present and finds an envelope for each player in the game, but when they all look inside, they find photos of their families. They start breaking down in tears as they all realize they may never see their loved ones ever again. It's a harsh reminder to Casper of his parents' tragic death as a kid, and he walks off to the pool room to calm himself down. Lonnie here comes in to check on him and comforts the man. She tells him that this game is trying to manipulate them and that he shouldn't let it get to his head. Later, the contestants gather back in the common room for the results of the next voting session, and find out that this time, the Irishman has gotten the least amount of votes, with Casper far ahead in the lead. As a reward for coming in first place, the panda shows what actually happened between the blonde and Casper the night before. It's clear to everyone that Casper was a perfect gentleman and turned her offer down. It's the reason he's getting the most votes out of everybody, and the audience is showing their support. The Irishman realizes he's made a terrible mistake, and now it's going to get him killed. He apologizes to Casper for jumping to conclusions, but the audience has already made their decision. The panda reveals that as the loser, he'll have to enter a fight to the death against one of these 4 fighters. All the voters watching make their choice, and when they tally up all the votes, the audience has chosen Botus here, who he'll have to fight to the death. The players know that he doesn't stand much of a chance fighting against this guy, and the group toasts the man to wish him luck in the most Irish way possible. The Irishman heads to the challenge room to face off against his opponent. Inside, he finally meets Botus, and this man is an absolute giant. It's an unfair fight, but the Irishman takes his corner and a bell rings to start the fight. The 2 men trade blows, and even though his opponent is significantly bigger, the Irishman overcomes the odds and chokes him to death. He's the only person to beat his challenge, but it's not over yet. The 3 other fighters that weren't chosen suddenly come out of the shadows, and he's told he must take them all on at the same time. Against 3 fresh opponents, he tries to put up a fight, but they take him down and brutally beat the man to death. That's 5 down, with 3 to go. Okay, this is the most deadly challenge they've had so far, but the only way he would have won is to cheat. I gotta be honest here. If I were in this situation, there's no way I could win this death match because I'm not a fighter, and even going up the stairs for me is exhausting. Having said that, if we can't overpower this beast of a man with our strength, then we're going to have to do it with our brains. Now, something I wouldn't do is drink before the match, because alcohol is going to make you react slower and have bad coordination during the fight. Instead of drinking shots with your friends, I would sneak the shot glasses into the arena and use them as projectiles to throw at him. Doing this will cause him to flinch, which helps me close the distance and land blows without getting hurt. Now, as a general strategy, we do not want to get in this guy's space. This is one monster of a man, which means he's slow, but if he gets you in his area of attack, he'll wrestle you to the ground and you won't be able to stop him. The best way to prevent this is to limit your attacks to long distance and quick movement, because your only advantage here is speed. The objective is to get him tired and move yourself around him to find your best opportunity to strike instead of rushing straight into his attack range. Now, even if we take this guy down, that leaves us with 3 new fighters, and even for a trained martial artist, you're not likely to beat them, which means we need to flip this deathmatch on its head. As a last-ditch effort, you might be able to buy yourself time to recover by suggesting that the audience would rather see a series of one-on-one matches to maximize the entertainment value, and this will make the show 10 times better. By using the mastermind's desire to please his audience, he might leave it to the viewers to decide, and our chances of survival will go up. After the challenge is over, Casper here has a conversation with the mastermind one-on-one. He decides to ask him what his motives are behind this game, and the man explains that he finds it disgusting how some people can become famous through no hard work or talent, and that he wants to cleanse the world of people just like them. That's when Lonnie comes into the room, insisting they're not like that and will prove him wrong. The mastermind is certain that the only reason they're even on the show is because they're all fame whores and want success without earning it, but he'll give them a chance to prove him wrong. Leaving them for the night, the screen goes dark and the 2 players decide to spend their last night together with millions of viewers watching. There's not a single room that doesn't have a camera, but in a game where popularity and public opinion means everything, it might have been the smartest decision they've ever made. The next day, the remaining 3 contestants gather in the common room to await the results, with no idea this will be the last time. The panda announces that Kat here has received the fewest votes this round, but she has one chance to redeem herself, and her challenge will be to beat the game's own mastermind, Furcus the Panda, in a chess match. Meanwhile, the FBI is hard at work on determining the location of the Funhouse, and this cop figures out the show is taking place in Grady, Oklahoma. A SWAT team is sent out to investigate the area and manage to find a trapdoor with a panda face symbol on it, just like the ones in the show. As they open up the hatch, they're shocked to find the severed heads of the contestants inside, along with a bomb that's about to explode. They were tricked, and will never rescue the remaining victims in time. At the real Funhouse, Kat here is about to start her challenge where a chessboard has been set up with oversized pieces. The panda explains that if he wins, she'll have to spin the Wheel of Fun just like Ula did, but her chances of winning are slim. The game begins, and Kat here is confident that she can win this, but the mastermind is always 2 steps ahead of her, and she realizes she's met her match. They've reached a checkmate, and she has no choice but to surrender her king, admitting defeat as the mastermind gloats in his victory. Kat here loses the game and is forced to spin the Wheel of Fun, but she lucks out. It lands on the gold section, meaning she's free to go, and the challenge will be passed on to Lonnie, who must now step into the room to take Kat's punishment for her. Trying to save her life, Casper volunteers to take her place in the challenge, and the mastermind accepts the deal, but he has one last trick up his sleeve. That's when he reveals that the next challenge is to have Casper and Lonnie duel to the death. But if they refuse, they'll cook his girlfriend alive inside a brazen bowl and feed her body to him for dinner. With no way out but to play, they both take up a pistol and walk 10 paces away from each other. Turning around, they point their guns at each other but decide to end this game on their own terms. Instead, they sacrifice themselves so they won't have to kill each other, and that's 7 down with none to go. Okay, this is tragic, but it was also entirely unnecessary. Casper here demanded that he take the punishment with the assumption that he might die to save her life. But when it became a duel against each other, they decided that it's much better for 2 people to die rather than 1. These are seriously the dumbest people on Earth, because they still had so many options available to them, and if Casper here still wanted to be a hero, he could have simply given his life in the duel to let her win. Now, if it were me, and we were actually interested in staying alive, there are 2 alternatives that I would have considered. The first is to tell Lonnie here that we should both end our lives in protest, but at the last second I would chicken out and just not pull the trigger. When she dies, I become the winner and it makes this a really easy problem to solve. She would be dead and we would be the winner by default. Now, this would have one seriously devastating problem because even though we would survive the duel, there's still another voting round against Kat here, and tricking your new girlfriend into the wrong end of her own gun is not going to be a popular move to the voters. The better solution is to actually consider what the rules were because the panda never told them that one of the players had to die. It would have been perfectly legal within the rules of the game to shoot the other player somewhere that was not fatal, and the round could theoretically be over. Now, the panda might want to get vindictive and force you to keep shooting, but I highly doubt it, because these are single-shot muzzle-loading pistols. Reloading one of these guns is incredibly time-consuming, which does not make for exciting television. Nobody wants to sit there and watch you reload 100-year-old pistols for 30 minutes. With this in mind, honoring the rules of the game by injuring the other player without killing them might be just enough to pass the challenge and survive into the next round. Kat here is the only survivor left, and she stares at the dead bodies in shock as all the staff begin to applaud her victory. With 7 players dead, she's finally won this death game, and the viewers just can't wait for Season 2. Escaping with $5 million in a duffel bag, the woman is found by a passerby and rescued. The authorities are still in the hunt for the mastermind behind the Funhouse, and the FBI holds her for questioning, but she has no information to help them find the criminal. Later, Kat here is sitting at home as the news plays on the TV, and this man is being interviewed about his continued success as an entrepreneur. No one knows that this man was the mastermind keeping celebrities trapped in a death game, and he'll never be stopped. After the interview, the man is playing the piano when Kat suddenly enters the room. She walks over to him, and they share a passionate kiss. These two were secretly working together this whole time, and he rigged the game and let her win, making him the deadliest simp in the world.
But what do you think? How would you beat Funhouse? Let me know with the comment down below. Thank you so much for watching, leave a like and subscribe, and check out the How to Beat playlist for more videos like this. Until next time, have a damn good day.